So here's my concept. I wanted to have a little NieR Stubby for a while. I just didn't know how to execute it until I saw a video with Grandpa Amu, and he was building a little robot for a kiddo, and I was like, oh, that's what I could do to like prototype this guy. So the legs are going to be free, and it's going to be very similar where, you know, the head's going to go on top, the arms are coming out the side, there's going to be a little shoulder socket, and maybe the little backside little thing, whatever, I don't know what it's called. This is why I made the balls, B-A-Z-Z, in my last video, 2022. But we're going to go to the scrap bin, and I have these old type keys, and I was like, you know what, that would be perfect for the eyes. I just have to clean them up, right? And I got these from auction. I have a video where I talk about getting tools from auction, and this is one of the, whoa, look at this guy. Serendipitous, right? Or foreshadowing, there you go. That's what it's going to look like. Anywho, I had talked about like getting into the heat of the moment and passion of bidding and stuff, and you got to be careful. And unfortunately, I'd already bid on these, and I got them for like $1 or something. And I was like, well, great, I won the type keys, but I didn't win the tool that I wanted. But here we go, you know. It all works out in the end. They just need a little bit of TLC, so I'm just going to pry these guys off carefully. I'm going to get the little securing piece off, and then I'm going to clean up the glass. That is, I don't even know what key that is. That's why I chose it, because it's so faded. I'm going to use a little piece of scrap paper and give it some happy eyes. They're not red. They aren't, you know, glowing red at this moment. But I could always change that later on if I wanted to. So that's just something to keep in mind. But that's just how it's going to be. I got those guys set up, and there's the eyes right there. I just want to talk about something else real quick before we get into the build. You ever notice how, like, you know, 2B9S, they have blindfolds? And I was wondering if Yoko Taro was a fan of, like, 90s R&B, because, I mean, look at PM Dawn here. Come on. Anyways, I just had to get that off my chest. I figured this was a good platform to do it. But let's get back into it. We're going to start with the legs. And I'm just going to take a couple pieces of scrap. Spoiler alert, this is all going to be done with scrap wood. And that's the point, right? To diminish your scrappiness. So that's good. But I'm just going to go through with a little piece right here and make some reproducible cuts for both sides. Left leg, right leg, and then we got to get ready for the feet. So this is just a 1/4-inch piece of scrap wood that I had, and I'm just going to make some 45-degree cuts just to replicate those wind-up toy feet like the Stubbies have, right? And then I'll clean up those the corners with the chisel just to make sure that both of them are as symmetrical as I can get them, so that one doesn't look weird and the other one looks different. You know what I mean? I'm trying to make it a little bit professional. So there we go. We got the legs and the feet ready to roll. The next thing we got to do is work on the body. Now, I had a couple of approaches that I was going to take with this. And the first one was just, you know, get a hole saw kit, take it out of the giant piece of ply and just do bigger circles for the outside, remove the inner circle, and then just be done with it. But once I thought about it, I was like, you know what? It would probably be better to do the outside with my circle cutting jig on the bandsaw. That way, everything will be completely reproducible, right? They're all the same diameter. It's very clean. It's not so jagged, because you know how sometimes the hole saw will make it very jagged. And if there's any point in which there's going to be any jaggedness, I want to hide it, which is going to be on the inner circle that we'll see later on. So here's just a little close-up view just to let you see that I have the diameters going for the outside on the circle cutting jig for those pieces of scrap. And this is just, I think it's like a 3/8-inch piece of ply, but nothing too mind-blowing. There it is. Boom. Done. But the main thing to keep in mind is that that inner circle that you're going to cut out is going to house the 2 legs and the brace. So just something you don't want to forget about after you make all these cuts. But the good thing about using the hole saw kit is that that inner bit for the hole saw and the dowel on my circle cutting jig are both the same. So I can use this as a guide. And there we go. We got the outer circle, and we'll just reproduce those in that stack you see in the top right. And then we'll get ready for the accents. So I just got some beads from the dollar store as the shoulders, and then I'm going into my, what I didn't even realize was a Greebly box. I didn't know what a Greebly was until like a few months ago. But I had some little pieces that I want for the little back accent. And I started thinking like, oh, I could probably do like these platters from the hard drive. I thought, that looks exactly what I'm looking for, but oh, these little white shim pieces, I don't wind up using those, so just scrap that idea. But that's the piece that I'm talking about. Here's the little hard drive hold down piece and the associated screws you'll see later. But unfortunately, they didn't bend to the back very well. They actually wind up destroying one of them. So I figured, you know what? I'll just make it out of sheet metal, reproduce it that way. And then I'll use what I use for a copper bending jig in my vise, and I'll just use that to bend it into submission so that it kind of, you know, hugs the back, so that whenever I go to mount it later, it'll whoop, look like that. That guy's drying. I got all those pieces. So let's go ahead and work on the hands while that's working and drying up over on the bench there. So I'm going through, I'm going to make some little fingers, and these are like the main finger pieces, but I go through and I make a thumb to go to glue onto it later on. But I'll just show you this. Just be careful. You know that I preach a lot about bandsaw safety, or just safety in general in the shop. So take your time, do what you're comfortable with, and you can always use a pencil eraser to get in there if you need to for those cuts where you're really close to the blade. But now I'm getting ready for the arms, and for the forearm pieces, you can see that I'm using this is a chopstick. So I'm just using a chopstick to mount for the forearm, and then I'm using this spare piece of block that came from the legs that I cut off earlier, and those are going to be the upper like bicep, tricep area. And so just want to use this is just like a little 90 block that I put together just to make sure that everything is symmetrical and the same. And I'll just drill a little hole for the chopstick to go into, and then I'll just kind of clean it up a little bit. But here we go. I just want those to be a nice snug fit. Tap it into place, and we've got our arms. There we go. Boom. So then we're going to go ahead and drill the holes to get everything ready to be mounted inside of the body for the legs. So I got the left and right leg, and I also have the inner brace piece that you'll see in a second. And I want to use a 3/16 inch bit for just doing the leg work, pun intended. So the brace, I want it to be snug, right? You saw that in the beginning of the video. The legs, I want them to dangle. So there's a 3/16 that mimics the chopstick that I'm going to use. And I'm going to use the 13/64 bit for the legs so that they can swing freely whenever the time comes. Like that. Clunk. Take that, buddy. There we go. See? Snug on the inside, 2 legs, free. And then I'm going to tap the rest of my chopstick in there, and I just drilled a hole about a little less than 1/4 of an inch down of where the shoulder is going to be. There it is. The legs swing freely, which is what I wanted. Make sure everything is level. And the good thing about using plywood for the body rings is after it's all glued up, you can just kind of count the stacks. And so that's what I did right there, right? I'm just going down, boom, 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 boom. And then I can see that's the area that I want to do. There's like that really weird dark ring piece towards the top there. So I'm going to use that on the other side. I'm going to drill where it needs to go, and then I'm going to connect that piece onto the other side. And boom, there we go. Make it in, tap it in. It's going to be all nice and well. Get the sawdust off. But there you go. You see that that's kind of the goal. That was the direction that I wanted to go into. But unfortunately, this chopstick had a little defect in it. It was kind of bent, and getting it in there and getting it snug without breaking anything was kind of difficult. So I used the drill to kind of twist it in. You know, like Laura Kampf says, every defect gets respect. But it's in there. It's good. We had some little hiccups with one of the legs there. You can kind of see it's a little bit dicey, but it still works. Yeah, kicking stuff. Take that. But here are the bead shoulders, and I kind of drilled out the 3/16 inch bit so that they're snug in there, because I just want them to go in, right? And you can see that side, really easy to get on. This side is where the chopstick was bent, so I had to use a socket to get that in there, and also just taking my time because I don't want anything to break. It's just wood, right? So just take that for what it's worth. But it's starting to come together little by little. And there's the eyes again. I just can't stop making that joke. But I clip them, sand them up, getting ready for the arms to go in. Boom, there we go. And in hindsight, I kind of regretted this decision to CA and wood glue them into place, because now they won't swing freely. And I can't pose them into different, not that I could really pose them. I could have done a little bit more to have the elbows move, but as far as the shoulders go, well, it is what it is. It's in there. But just keep that in mind as well. If you want them to swing freely, or if you want them to pose, you've only got to find that amount of time so that the arms are in there. But the legs are still free, so that's kind of nice. And I just kind of offset them a little bit because I realized my mistake. All right, and then we're going to go Astro Boy it with some primer. We're going to prime this guy, and with Movie Magic, we're done. The glue is dry. So I use the white primer on the body, and then I use the Rust-Oleum. It's like a texturizing paint that makes it look a little bit rusty. But they also have like a tan color. They're not so much gray, so that kind of works out. I got a bucket for a head. Looks like a good, could be a good band name for a guitar player. But anyways, I digress. Now we're gonna have to work on the neck, where the balls with a Z is gonna mount for the head. And so I just used my scrap inner pieces on the circle, glued them together, all the circles together, and then I'm kind of putting it at an angle to kind of get like a domed effect. And I'm just raising the bed of the bandsaw up little by little, taking my time, making sure everything is gonna be symmetrically cut on this blade. You can kind of see there that it's a bit of a rough go, and I mean, it's working to a degree, but in hindsight, maybe another approach would just to take your time and do it on a disc sander, or if you got something else, let me know in the comments, because this is the part that I kind of struggled with the most. Saving the best for last, but here you see, right, I'm raising the blade. I'm getting my fingers in there close, but I feel comfortable with it. Do what you feel comfortable with, but also be safe. Again, take the time for safety, right? Once we start getting up to where it's like pretty close to a 45 degree, it's starting to get a little bit into the dangerous category. So I actually had to remove my little platter there and do like a zero clearance kind of thing, so that I didn't lose control, because now it's starting to become round. It's starting to be a little bit more dangerous, but again, I just take my time and try to dome out that top as much as I can. And there it is. There's the piece that the head is going to recess into, but I have to get that, yeah, there it is, like a top. But I have to get the excess for it to actually recess into. I have to get that off. So I'm thinking, like, you know, am I going to take this to, like, just use a handsaw, use a Dremel, or use the disc sander, use a hand sander, something like that? And I'm like, man, what am I going to do? And I'm like, well, you know what? Boom, take it back to the bandsaw. Make it cozy, buddy. Make it cozy. And so that's what I did. So I got to get in there. This thing is round. I don't want it to travel and grip away from me with that blade spinning down on the bandsaw like it does. And so that's why I'm using this clamp here. And I'm just going back and forth to trying to, like, you know, follow my guide with the pencil marks that I have in there. And then once I get enough of the de-stressing cuts, then I'll just go in and boom, just take out the whole lot. And that'll get me the bulk of the excess removed. Now, again, in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have made it as flat, quote unquote flat, as I needed, but now I got to go in with the rotary tool and get out the excess in the middle so that the ball will actually recess in there. And after I did that, I had to figure out a way to get the eyes to mount. And all I did was use my microwave blower motor turn grinder once again, and made little, like, quote unquote knives for it to just kind of, you know, pound into the wood. I mean, it's wood after all, so why not? It's like a nail. So I'm using the rubber mallet. I don't want to mar the surface, although if it was marred, does it really matter? It just shows like some battle scars, but it's all right. So that's it for the eyes. Now we're going to move on to that accent piece on the back. So I have it bent. I have all the hard disk drive screws that the platter was mounted with anyways, so I'll just use those. And you can see that the little sheet metal piece that I'm using here is very scratched and marred. My hope is that it just kind of rusts naturally over time. I'm sure the screws wouldn't, because they're probably stainless or something, but hopefully with that galvanized surface scratched up, it'll rust. But here we go. There's the bucket, and whoa. This cannot continue, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, we got the bucket, we got the body, we got the head. I had to add a little shim in there just to make sure everything was flat and level. And then we're going to attach the neck to the body, and this little guy will be ready to wreak havoc, you know what I'm saying?